Man, that star rise. It's pretty merciless when it rolls in over the small fishing town of Tetela. Doriel, the planet Jistoa's red dwarf parent, seldom lets up on the populace. It was never just dawn. It was as if the light bled in, slowly, almost as if it regretted doing so, but still, relentless, as if sorrow had just clocked in 30 minutes early and was already complaining that Jimmy in accounting had brought the wrong kind of donuts. Coming out of the town's eastern district was a young boy of about 10 years old. Zakary Sevendust kicked a can down the street on his way down to the promenade, as his father, Cyrus, followed behind, smoking a cigarette and looking stoic as he always did. They'd left home before starrise to head to some ruin on the southeast of town. It was definitely nothing like a sunrise like we have here on Earth, more like Jistoa's violet minaret-etched sky cracked open and started gushing blood, dragging this red haze over salt-worn rooftops and alleyways. It all looked cobbled together from whatever washed up on Welland's beach on the eastern side of town, which cut across the island's coast. People outside of Tetala called the place quaint, but that was a lie the tourism industry fed to outsiders. What you really saw was sea-bleached concrete beaten thin by storms, steel and plastic panels slapped on from who the fuck knows where, and every surface was covered in scars and pits. Personally, I wouldn't want to live in Tetala. Frankly, it's a fucking dump, and the people who live here, they love their dump. If you thought anything ever sparkled here, you'd be wrong. The skyline just poured over like a wound that never healed. That harsh reddish light, frankly, it looked painful, almost bloody, as if it had been smudged across broken glass, or maybe some idiot tried to take a piece of steel wool and scrub the town's collective trauma away from the face of the morning. But the town, bless it, the town held on claws deep. But you could almost feel the populace flinch as the eastern horizon lit up every morning, as if it expected the past or a horde of dire wolves from the northern forest to burst from the mists and attack again. And the ocean, oh man, the deep, dangerous, azure-colored Tracifus Sea, full of giant sharks, krakens the size of school buses, even massive Dunkleosteus and 9-foot-long anomalocarids, and the occasional Basilosaurus, which is a giant carnivorous whale. Even it bowed before the star rise, rushing backward over the coquina, pebbles, and half-rotted fish carcasses on Welland's beach, with a kind of resentment only an ocean could express, like it carried every bad memory beneath the waves and hadn't forgotten a single one. Zachary stood about 4 feet tall, with short, shaggy blonde hair, icy blue eyes full of curiosity and wonder, physically fit for a boy his age, but still inexperienced in the art of warfare, wearing a black t-shirt with a simple leather jacket patched with Kevlar squares, and a pair of blue jeans likewise patched with Kevlar. His boots were heavy. It was clear the boy was being raised as a warrior. And Cyrus was, however, a seasoned warrior, with long, shaggy blonde hair, similar blue eyes, but they were eyes that had seen far too much, hands that had done too much, wearing thick Kevlar armor on his torso and legs, a greasy black trench coat, a belt equipped with any number of contingency weapons, including caltrops, bombs, and a pistol, though he rarely used them, instead preferring to go mano a mano with Baneslayer, a katana with a 3-foot-long blade growing out of a gilded hilt shaped like an open rose, its handle wrapped with worn Kevlar. Baneslayer was the family heirloom of the nearly extinct Sevendust clan, who had roots in Hyros on the eastern continent of Arula. If anyone who wasn't a Sevendust tried to wield Baneslayer, it would begin to drain the user's mana at a terrifying rate. Zachary shielded his eyes from the thick molten glow, but it didn't stay put, sprawling over buildings and onward, bleeding its way forward, rolling inland, westward toward Auralia, another smaller but neater fishing village. to the northeast, where the hills wore deep browns and greens and the trees huddled together messily. Freyborn, a farming community where the nearby Lake Wana reflected the sky's weird mood back up at it, and also the largest settlement on Relamia. And Zelma, a shipping hub on the eastern shore, hugging the northern wastes, which were home to gorgonopsids, sandworms, and giant scorpions, and even sentient cacti, inaccessible on foot without braving the haunted forest where the living dead roamed freely. The can Zakary kicked rolled into an open storm drain, and Cirrus nodded his head and made a hand signal indicating to remain silent as they entered the promenade. Zakary squinted, and through the mist he could see the Antarla, a trade ship breaking through the mist, its white sails indicating its neutrality, as a flock of green-feathered cliff gulls flew over, loud, carnivorous things related to common seagulls, each the size of a small child. Stubborn creatures and dangerous in number, but attacks on humans, incredibly rare. The flock tore across the city and out over the sea to hunt some flish, their favorite food. A flish is a fish with long wing-like fins that can take flight for several miles before diving back down into the water. It was as if the world hadn't quite woken up, or perhaps it was just didn't fucking want to. Zakary and Cyrus passed a row of advertisements as the glass caught the red, snatching it like a pickpocket. Some blinked, others sat quietly with the words "no signal" on the screens. The air thunked with heat. Or perhaps that's just how the light danced. A genuine staccato, like someone was slapping a pair of cymbals together right behind your eyelids. The smell of ozone and melted plastic filled the area after last night's lightning tantrum fried everything worth stealing in the building. The weather on Jistoa was nothing like anything we see here on Earth. Tedala ultimately didn't care. It was the kind of place that carried scars on its sleeve and sometimes forgot to bathe. Clinging along the western coast, half trying to forget, half daring you to ask, what the piss happened here? Some cities get demolition and reconstruction. Others get museums. Tedala? Oh man. Tedala developed a stubborn streak. You could already feel it as Zakary and Cirrus walked into the docks. A crew of humans. You seriously want me to describe a fucking human? Look in the mirror. Orcs, hulking humanoids with tusks growing from their lower jaws, with skins ranging from grays, browns, greens, some even blue, some standing up to 9 feet. Dwarves, stout bearded dwarves with skins ranging from pale pink to deep browns, thick beards ranging from black, brown, blonde, and red, topping out at 4 feet tall. They were already slinging stories, insults, and singing songs, voices punching through the morning mist. Their humor had teeth that made young Zakary cringe. Their laughter was so rough you'd think they were gargling sand rather than moving crates and barrels of goods. Be- just beyond this chaos, a young Felix boy about Zachary's age ran across the dockside barefooted. A flash of bare heels and wild hair zipped down on an alley, vanishing so quickly the growing crowd into the growing crowd you'd think you'd hallucinated him. Every single Felix are very close to a human in appearance, except they have long furry cat-like ears, long tails, retractable claws on their fingertips instead of fingernails, and slitted pupils in their eyes. Felix ran the typical gamut of pale pink to brown, with some even appearing gray. On the edge of the chaos sat a squat old gnome trader with a thick white moustache and a bald head. He spat, "Move, you piece of junk," in a high-pitched yet raspy voice at his lumpy old drone. The thing hovered just above a trash pile, refusing flat out to lift off before the sparks erupted from its rotors and it fell in, smoke wafting past the as to The graffiti covered cement wall, layers of paint so thick you could peel the years away like old dried out wallpaper. Soon, the day began in earnest at the docks. That's when neon signs kicked on, trying to pretend things were going better than they actually were. Excuse me. They buzzed away, colors smearing down wet planks like candy spilling out of a bag, pushing out a fake hope to anyone hungry enough to look up. The hollow ads were relentlessly projected by drones, banking on desperate dreams to sell a cheap energy drink that tasted like straight iron. The slogan read, all gritty and manic, "Unleash the beast inside. You, God mode, energy, taste victory." Nobody bought in. You could tell the way people shuffled past without looking up that they'd been hustled enough in their lives, and a terrible tasting energy drink wouldn't change that. Zachary caught the ad in the corner of his eye and recoiled. He'd tasted God mode before. It was awful. That glowing promise meant jack shit. He could see it in the stone faces of fishermen. If one smiled, you'd know you'd stepped into the wrong universe, or one of them caught something that didn't try to catch them back like an anomalocaris. Even the juveniles were deadly with their twin face tentacles with long spikes, having killed their fair share of fishermen. Their meat was tasty, though. Not bad for a giant carnivorous bug, but in Tetela, nobody wastes food. Not even monster meat. And with that, I'm going to call it here. 12 minutes is enough. And we're on to another portion after that. I just need to take a break because that's just how my vocal cords are. They get tired.